to tell us when to get out. Now, I want to go through a few other examples and a few other scenarios. So this is when we get in, we've got an action line. And this is when we get out, when price violates the safety line, the opposing line. For some of you that are confused, it's all right. We're going to go through another example here, and that's okay. I understand that this is probably the first time you were hearing this concept, and I'm throwing some maybe terminology at you that you've never heard before. Maybe you've never used, dumbbells before, and I'm showing you guys all the different weights, and maybe they're in kilograms, and you're not used to that. This strategy will be simple enough that even if you don't know the correct terms, that you will be able to replicate this on your own. After tonight's masterclass, this is my main goal. Now let's go through just a few other examples. Let's say that Roku doesn't do something like that. Let's say that Roku comes up like this. Price has just intersected a line. What is this line now called? Let's say, and let me move my mouse, sorry. Okay, let's say something like this happens. The price of Roku moved up and it broke our downward trend line. Our downward trend line now has a name. It's an action line, which means it is now time for us to take action to get into a trade. Now, instead of taking a short position or placing a sell order, our downward trend line was crossed. So this is an indication that price is no longer trending down. It just broke through it. Now we are thinking of placing a buy order or a long position. I'm going to go ahead and throw my emoji on here. Boom. Up. We have placed a buy order. We now have an action line. It told us to take action and to get into a trade. What is the opposing trend line? We've got an action. That's the downward trend line that got crossed. Which one is the safety line? We need a safety line. Correct. It's the green. Thank you. Yes. I may have asked you that wrong. The green line, the upward green line, is going to keep us safe. As long as the price of Roku continues higher and higher and respects the opposing trend line, the safety line, we're going to stay in that trade. We don't know when it's going to violate it, when it's going to break it, but we do know as long as it respects it and follows along it, we're staying in. So let's say that Roku does something like this. Comes up, it pulls down a little bit, it goes up. This thing is moving higher and higher and higher. We're feeling good. Let's say the price of Roku does something like this. As long as it respects our safety line, we're staying in that trade. Got in here and we're still in if price is here. Now, what if the price doesn't continue to respect it all the way up to this $110? If the price breaks it down here, let's say the price of Roku broke it right here. What is that our indication to do? The price just violated our safety line, the line that was supposed to keep us safe. Yes, get out, exactly. That is now our indication to close our trade. Did we know the price of Roku was going to break this upward trend line on March 10th, 2026 at 8:30 a.m.? No, we didn't. This is the coolest part where we're not trying to predict or guess. We didn't know when the price was going to break through this. We just stayed in our position until price broke and we got out. Now, one thing, and I can't go too in depth. Like we're learning the workout. I can't go through nutrition or, showing you guys why we're using this specific, muscle group, but I'm going to show you guys the workout and you're going to be able to replicate this after tonight's masterclass. So I won't go into too much of the nitty gritty here. So we've got action line, we've got safety line. Now, what I do want to show you guys is how do you continue to trade? So let's say that you get into a trade and you get out right here. You get in and you get out. You're going to need to do something to your lines. We're going back to emojis. You got in because price broke a downward trend line. That was a long position or a buy order. Now to close your position, you're going to place a sell order. Now let's say that you're done. Your trade is closed. It's over. Now what do we do with our lines? We're going to go through the same exact rules here, the same rules that we went through before. This downward trend line is now intersecting. I need to either delete it or move it. Prices are already intersected. We need to make sure that we're still following a rule. So when you're not in a trade, you go back to your top-down analysis rules. Every trend line has to connect and price can't have intersected. This is where we will delete this line. And let's say that the price of Roku made this new high. I'm going to go back. I got to zoom out a little bit because I can't find my point B. Oh, there it is. So This was accurate at one point, but now that the price of Roku is intersected, we have to take this line and move it to this new high. We're going to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So trade is closed, you're not in a position, you go back to your top-down analysis rules. Wait for price to break a trend line. It's now an action line. How long do you stay in? Until it violates the safety line. This is the meat of the strategy. You continue to rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Now I want to show you guys the top-down analysis again on something called Bitcoin. I'm sure you've heard of it. And then I want to go through just a few more trade examples here. After this, you guys will have a pretty clear understanding of, okay, I know what top-down analysis is. I know that all my trend lines have to connect and they can't intersect. And I know how to move from the top down, monthly, weekly, daily, 4 hour, 1 hour, and continue on if you prefer. And then I know when to get into a trade and when to get out of a trade. So we're going to go over to Bitcoin now. Bitcoin, we're going to go to the monthly time frame. We're starting from scratch again. So let's say for example, now you're on your own. So you've done the masterclass. This is, you've taken in all the information, but now you're ready to do it on your own. So you're going to pick a chart. You're going to go home. You're already home. You're going to pull up a chart, any chart, pick a card, any card. And you're going to implement the same concepts that I taught you guys. Top down. So we're starting at the monthly. We're going to draw our first upward trend line. We're going to use the ray tool here. Upward trend line. To start, we're going to use the lowest point we see on the screen. Lowest point we see on the screen is, all of this price action over here. But if I draw a trend line, way over here to the left, it's not a trend line. So here's also another, for those of you guys taking notes, just write a little side note or like a tip. We'll write tip. Trend line tip here. If your trend line is horizontal, 0 degrees, it's not a trend line. So the trend line has to have some degree of an angle here. So this specific line, if you were following the steps here, which is lowest point you see on the screen without price intersecting, this is an example of a horizontal line. There is no degree. It's not a trend line. So this is just a tip to move on to the next lowest point you see on the screen that does provide any sort of incline, any sort of upward trend, any sort of degree. So we're drawing our trend line here. Now I'm going to use this point over here to the left because now I'm using this low. I can incorporate a new low that actually gives it some sort of degree, some sort of angle upward. We've got point A, point B. Let's continue. We're going to draw a second trend line. Previous point B is new point A. Boom. Point A, point B. Now we're going to zoom in I'm going to use the plus feature so that I can just see a little bit clearer. Same thing. Now we're going to continue until we just don't have much more price action to work with. So that's kind of your indication that you can move down to the next time frame. When you've drawn as many lines as you can, that's your indication to start continuing down. Top down analysis, monthly, weekly, daily, 4 hours. So we're in the monthly now. We still have more pullbacks and more price action to work with, so we can draw another trend line. Previous point B, new point A, boom, boom. Now for a downward trend line, we don't have a point B. So this is where this is our kind of indication that we can move to the lower time frame. Monthly, now we're going to the weekly. This is slightly off. Let me just adjust a little bit. There we go. Okay, so we can't draw any downward trend lines yet on the monthly time frame. When we move to the weekly, we might be able to see a little bit more information. We're just coming in with a like a magnifying glass. We're getting a little bit more precise so we can just see more price action here. All right, weekly time frame. Okay. Weekly time frame, we can see a clear area or a clear place to draw a downward trend line. But as you can see here to the left, the price is poked through ever so slightly. Remember, that's going to happen when you move from the top down, when you do a top-down analysis. You're starting from a very broad perspective and then you're coming in just more and more precise. So we're going to need to slightly adjust this trend line to make sure the price hasn't poked through. And when you do that, it has now moved price away from where we originally had it. We need to come in with another trend line. Previous point B, new point A. Price hasn't intersected yet. We followed all of our rules. So regardless of what I'm adding or what I'm deleting or when I'm moving time frames, as long as you follow these rules as you do your top-down analysis, you're going to be fine. If I mention something that's maybe a little bit confusing, or if I just moved a line, you're like, well, you had it drawn that way on the monthly time frame, you're going to be fine. As long as you follow those guidelines and those steps, making sure every trend line connects and price doesn't intersect, regardless of when you draw a trend line, if it's on the monthly and then you draw, another one on the weekly, as you continue to move down lower and lower time frames, you're going to be fine as long as you follow the rules. Now we can draw our first downward trend line. Our first downward trend line, remember, we use the highest point we see on the screen since this is a downward trend line, point A, pivot point, and then point B is going to be a lower high, a pullback here, a lower high, but where price has not yet intersected. I'm also going to make this red. Boom, there we go. This is as many lines as we can draw on the weekly time frame. Now this is our indication that we can continue to move down. We're going to a daily time frame. All right, previous point B, new point A, boom, boom. And we can come in with a steeper upward trend line. Remember, the reason we're doing this is just to capitalize on as much price movement as possible. We're just trying to find all of the trends here, all of the price movements, and we're tracking it with trend lines. All right, that's the daily time frame. That's as far as we can go on the daily time frame. Let's continue down. We're going to the 4-hour time frame. Moderators, if we can keep an eye out for the chat, please, that'd be great. All right, and here we go. Now we're in the 4-hour time frame. Same rules, same concept, same structure here. Previous point B, new point A. We're going to draw our downward trend line here. Price has not yet intersected. We're going to make this red. And now we're going to go down to the 1-hour time frame. This is going to be, let's say that this is your designated time frame. This is your preferred way to slice the pie. This is where you trade. You trade in the 1-hour time frame. If you trade any lower, if you guys are familiar with, your designated time frame, or you already know which one works for you, you'll continue to move down until you make it to your designated time frame. Then that's where you stop. That's where you do all of your trade management. That's where you find your action line, you find your safety line in your designated time frame. Now, as we are getting more precise, you can see that trend line that I drew that looked pretty perfect on the 4-hour now looks a little bit wonky, looks a little bit off in the 1-hour. So you just need to make some slight adjustments here. There we go. And now I'm going to come in with a steeper downward trend line here. Previous touch point. I'd say we can't go any steeper. If we want to incorporate this new low, price intersected back here. So this is where we've got to just continue to make sure we're following the rules. Price hasn't intersected. There we go. Previous point B, new point A, and we've made it down to real-time price action. Okay. We've got all of our downward steep trend lines. We have tracked price as much as we possibly can with all of our downward trend lines. We can come in with a steeper upward trend line. We're going to come in with a steeper upward trend line here. Previous point B is new point A, so this is our pivot point back here. And as long as price hasn't intersected, we've got an accurate upward trend line. We're going to make this green. What's going on? Oh, there we go. Okay, now I want you guys to see this example yet again. Okay, now I'm using something called a replay tool in TradingView. This means we can go back and replay what the price has done. Now I'm going to preface this. Yes, I have cherry picked a trade. This is a scenario where the price ended up playing out beautifully. Since I don't have very much time with you guys, I cannot go over too many different scenarios. I want you guys to see a scenario that works out beautifully. I will be going over a few scenarios that do not work out as beautifully. And we already understand, as I walked you guys through my broker statements, there are going to be losing months. In addition to that, that means there are also going to be losing trades. There's going to be instances where you get into a position and then it doesn't work out and it immediately violates the safety line. In that scenario, you have to take a loss. But this is where, as long as we implement this strategy consistently and over again, we allow probabilities to work in our favor. This is the point here. So we need one strategy that we can implement consistently over and over again. I need you guys to have a workout that is so simple that you can go to the gym and do this over and over again. As long as you do this same workout over and over again, probabilities are going to work in your favor. What's so funny, and I've seen a few comments in the chat, and I don't usually like to address negativity, but some people have said there's no way this strategy works out because of fake outs or because of X, Y, and Z. This strategy has been back tested. If you take every single setup, you take every break of every line, at the very end, worst case scenario was that you ended break even. Crazy. Now, how do we just simply get one leg up instead of being break even? How crazy that worst case scenario was just you ended where you started. I'll take it. Most people can't do that. 90% of traders actually lose money. So even if that scenario happens to you, you're in the 10%. Congratulations. How do we add just one layer? Now, there is much more to this. There is criteria. There are things that we can wait to happen in order for us to get into a position. We can get a little bit more scientific with our trades. But I have the confidence and the comfortability and the excitement of this strategy that if you take this system here now and you implement this over and over and over again, I know the power of the safety line is going to keep you safe and allow probabilities to work in your favor. That worst case scenario is break even. Now, but with that being said, there are still losing months involved and there are still losing trades involved. This is being able to implement this over a long period of time. That's what many people do not do. Most people don't go to the gym long enough to see the transformation. So I need you guys to implement something long enough to see the transformation. But there are ways to shortcut this, and I'm going to be completely 100% with you guys. We're already coming up on 2 hours now, and I know that's just a massive amount of time, but there's so much information I could give you guys. I mean, you already know that. You've done your research. I want you to know that there are ways to get pickier about trades instead of taking every single setup. And we are so okay with it. Price can break either one. It can break the downward, it can break the upward. Are we getting into a position now? Yes. Because price broke a trend line. Price. Now we're going to say, since I'm using the replay tool, it shoots the candle out as though it just had already happened. Best case scenario, price broke this trend line. We're getting in somewhere over here. So just, I want you guys to know the feature that I'm using. So this is, we don't get to see this price slowly move up higher and higher and higher and higher. So since price broke a downward trend line, it now has a name, an action line, and now it's time to get into the trade. What? This is going to be a buy.